Welcome to the third lecture of course module of communication engineering. So in the last lecture, we have seen the definition of modulation, what is the need of modulation, and we have also already discussed about the uh, unguided channel, okay, wireless channel. So that we have already seen in the last lecture. Now today we have to discuss few more topics which are very important to develop the concepts, okay, because these are the very basic topics. So that topic we have to see today. So in this lecture today I'm going to discuss you about the signals, okay, so what kind of signals we have and how to define this signal, okay, and how to classify the signals. So that we have to look at so that we will be able to build up our concept slowly about the communication engineering. Further, I will be explaining you, if time permits today, then I will be explaining you about a few important Fourier transforms of the signals. Okay. So let's start this discussion. So first of all, we have to look at the classification of the signals. Okay. So before starting the classification of the signal, we have to understand that what we mean to say a signal. Okay, what we mean to say a signal. So as you can see here, I have written that the signal, it is represented mathematically as a function of one or more independent variable. Okay, it is represented mathematically as a function of one or more independent variable. So first of all, we have to understand that it will be a function. What we mean to say a signal is nothing but it will be a function, any arbitrary function, okay, that will assume a certain value depending on a particular independent variable, okay. Here you can see that we are writing that the independent variable can be one, at least one, or it can be more than one independent variable. Just for the simplicity, we can think of like what could be a signal. So for example, when we talk about a speech, human speech signal, okay, when any human is speaking something, then obviously what we are doing is we are actually generating a sound wave, which is a mechanical wave. Okay, so generally this sound wave is also, you can say that this sound wave is actually producing the acoustic pressure. Okay, so whenever we speak something, then over a time, basically this acoustic pressure is changing. Okay, and that acoustic pressure can be recorded in a certain form so that the variation of the acoustic pressure can be observed with respect to time. Okay, so here you can see in this picture, in this particular picture, I have this speech signal of 100 millisecond duration. Okay, so this is one of the speech signal. Okay, sample I have taken. Okay, and this is of 100 millisecond. So here we can see that basically I have not shown what is the quantity onto the x-axis and what is the quantity onto the y-axis, but this can be considered as like on x-axis we are having the time scale and onto the y-axis it is an amplitude. Okay, now the question comes, what this amplitude is, what this amplitude reflects, which quantity it reflects. So it will depending on means what kind of measuring instruments that we have and what quantity we are measuring. For example, it may be like this amplitude may represent the acoustic pressure directly over a time, or if you consider a mic, for example, if we have a mic, so onto the mic, when we speak something, this acoustic pressure will generate a certain voltage and current waveforms. Okay, this is the property of the mic, that the mic is actually designed such a way that when we speak something, then the carbon granules onto the mic is changing the resistances, and accordingly there will be a equivalent current will be generated within the circuit. So this particular waveform, either you can say that it is a acoustic pressure with respect to time, or you can also say that it may be an equivalent current or voltage waveform which is generating due to the acoustic pressure. So here we can say that we have only one independent variable, which is nothing but our time, and we have one dependent variable, which is either it is a voltage or current inside the circuit, or it may be an acoustic pressure that a human is generating through their mouth. So this is giving you one signal, okay? It giving you an indication that at a certain point, the acoustic pressure is very small, and at a certain other points, the acoustic pressure is more. Okay. Similarly, we can say that if it is in terms of voltage or current, then we can say that at a certain point, the amount of current flowing through the circuit is very small, and at some other point, the current is high. Okay, its amplitude is high. And here we can see that the signal is quite random. I have already told you that the when we look at the original speech signals waveform, then that waveform looks very random. Okay, so it is quite random in nature. So this is what we mean to say a signal. Now we can look at another example. Okay, so this is, you can see that we have one of the grayscale image here. Okay, so in this grayscale image we can see that basically this can also be regarded as a signal, because what we can see is we are having the two coordinates, one x coordinate and the y coordinates, which is here it is not the time but the spatial variables. Okay, we are having x coordinate and y coordinates. So when we are moving to x coordinates and y coordinates, and we are trying to locate a certain point onto this image, then you can find that the brightness of the picture is being changing. Okay, somewhere it is very dark, somewhere it is light. Okay, so based upon the grayscale value, the brightness of this particular image is changing when we are changing the coordinate space point, okay, x and y. So we can say that the independent variable in this case is our two spatial variables, x variable and y variables, and the dependent variable is nothing but the brightness of this image. Okay, and thereby it is giving you a signal. Fine. So this way we can define the signal, which is a function of one or more independent variable. Now, once we understood what we mean to say the signal, we have to understand that the signals is not always be like, for example, in this case, we have taken the independent variable as a time, or independent variable as a coordinate space. Okay, so there may be a certain signals, okay, that certain signals that may have a different independent variable, and a dependent quantity may be something else. Okay, so generally when we talk about in communication engineering, we are actually interested in the signal which is a single valued function of time. Okay, we generally discarded all other kind of signals. So generally we consider basically in this communication course that we are studying, in this case we are actually interested in a signal which is actually only depending on the time. Okay, it is not depending on some other parameters, but there are certain signals that you can see. For example, if you talk about the variation of the air pressure, okay, or temperature or a wind speed, with altitude. Okay, as we go, if the height, we go on high. Okay, so when we go from the ground to some in the space, okay, as our height increases, then obviously the air pressure will vary, the temperature will vary, or the wind speed is also varying. So this is also giving you another kind of signal. Okay, it is also giving you another kind of signal. Okay, in which we are not talking about time as an independent variable, but our altitude or the height will be the independent variable, and the dependent variables, that will be our air pressure, temperature, or wind speed, or any quantity that we are interested in. Okay, so that way we can have a different type of signals. Similarly, you can also means draw a graph or relationship between gross domestic product, okay, the GDP of our country. So how it varies quarterly, okay, how it varies quarterly or monthly if you want to calculate. Okay, so this way we can have a different type of relationships that gives you a certain information. Okay, but you remember that in our communication engineering we have to talk about a signal which is a single valued function of time. Okay, so at a certain time a signal or the quantity of interest is going to assume a unique value. Okay, it is going to take a unique value. Okay, so this is what we have to understand about this signal. Now the signal could be one dimensional, it could be two dimensional, three dimensional, or four dimensional. So just briefly you can understand, like in the space signal, music signal, or any computer data, uh, into which you can see that the number of independent variable is just one. Okay, we are just having one independent variable, and the quantity of interest will be the strength of the signal. Okay, so that will be called as the one dimensional signal, because only one independent variable with respect to time we are looking at the variation of the strength of the signal, like in the space signal, music signal, or any computer data. Okay, so we are just looking at with respect to one independent variable. Similarly, in case of the two-dimensional signal like still images or any pictures, I said we are having two spatial variables, okay, x and y coordinates, because we cannot define one-dimensional image. It can be a two-dimensional image. Okay, so there will be some x coordinate and y coordinate. So number of independent variable will be two. Okay, so similarly, we can have the three-dimensional signal like video, because we know that the video signal is nothing but we are having the still images, but this still images will be means there will be a certain frame rate by which it will be presented before us, so that we will be able to perceive it as a moving picture. Okay, so basically, like, you must be aware that there will be a 24 frames per second is actually being displayed, so that we will be able to feel it like a moving picture. Okay, so there is two independent variable for the case of your still images, and because we are means displaying it at a certain rate, so because it is also changing with respect to time, there are total three independent variables. Okay, and that will be giving you three-dimensional signal. Similarly, we are having four-dimensional signal, in which if we talk about any volume data, which is again changing with respect to time. Okay, if we are expanding a volume, we are filling the gas, and we are talking about how the dimension of that particular volume is changing over the time. That will be called as four-dimensional signal. So we are having the different type of signal. Now we have to look at another classification of the signal, which is very important as far as your signal systems is concerned, or a communication system is concerned. Okay, so I will be discussing briefly, because The very elaborate definitions is not required here, but just the basic understanding is enough. So basically, if you look at the classification of the signal, then you will find in any of the book that the signal is basically categorized into this five different categories. Okay. So first of all, the first one is the continuous time or discrete time signal. The second one is analog and digital signal, periodic and aperiodic signal, energy and power signal, deterministic and probabilistic signals. So first of all, as we can look at the continuous time and discrete time signal, so its name itself suggests that when we talk about the continuous time signal, then it means that any signal which is defined for every instant of time. Okay, it is taking a value, it is assuming a value for every instant of time, or you can say it is defined for every instant of time. Here you can see that onto the x-axis we are having time, and onto this y-axis we are plotting the magnitude of this particular signal, and we can see that the signal is being defined for each and every instant of time. Okay, it is defined completely for each and every instant of time, and therefore we can call it as a continuous time signal. Now, when we talk about the discrete time signal, okay, what we can say is uh, we can take the sampled value of this continuous time signal. For example, if I discretize the time, you understand that it is continuous time means for each and every instant of time, the signal is being defined. But in case of discrete time, we are actually discretizing the time. Okay. So the time itself is not defined for each and every instant, but at a particular interval, we have to talk about the value of the signal. Okay, so here you can see that a particular signal is being defined, and here either you can say that it is the, we can call it as the 0th sample, first sample, second sample, third sample, fourth sample. This way we can give the name, or otherwise we can also write in this form like after means signal value at 0th second, or 1 second at or 2 second, third second, or 3 millisecond, or 4 millisecond, 5 millisecond, or so on. Okay, so it is nothing but the sampled version of this continuous time signal, is a sampled version. Okay, so for a simplicity, you can assume one example. Let us suppose that if we are interested in the variation of the temperature, let's see on a particular day, for example, today, if we want to take a variation plot of the temperature between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., then we can have a plotter through plotter which is connected through a sensor, temperature sensor, and that temperature sensor will be sensing the temperature continuously, and that the plotter will plot the variation of the temperature between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So that data will be a continuous data if we are interested, if we are recording the entire plot, okay, between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. But suppose that somebody is only interested in the variation of the temperature at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., then 11. It means that at every 1 hour interval, then we can plot a data like this. Okay, like at 9 a.m. what is the temperature, at 10 a.m. what is the temperature, and so on, and up to 5 p.m. Okay, so that will be our discretized data, because we are not plotting each and every point, but we are discretizing the time in a finite set. Okay, and then we are just looking at the temperature values at those time instant. So that type of signal is called as the discrete time signal, which is very easy to understand. Now we have to talk about the analog and the digital signal. So try to understand that generally people are getting confused when we are talking about analog signal and digital signal. So what is the confusion is many people what says is the analog signal, they are actually thinking that if it is a discretized signal, then it will be a digital signal, or if it is a continuous signal, then it will be an analog signal. But it is not true. Okay, you try to understand the continuous time and the discrete time signal is a different concept than the analog signal and the digital signal. As I said, the continuous time and discrete time is actually related with the x-axis. Okay, it is discretization or non-discretization of your time scale. Okay, that is its name itself suggests continuous time and discrete time. But the analog and the digital, this two words belongs to your amplitude. You try to understand that it belongs to your amplitude. If amplitude is continuous, okay, uh, uh, without taking care of the time, okay, so you do not bother about the time, okay, just you talk about the amplitude. If amplitude is continuously varying, okay, then that the signal will be analog signal. If amplitude is discretized, okay, then the signal will become digital signal. Now, based on the continuity of the time or discontinuity of the time, the analog signal or digital signal can have either continuous time analog signal or discrete time analog signal. Okay, it can be a continuous time analog or it can be a discrete time analog. Similarly, we can have the continuous time digital signal or we can have the discrete time digital signal. So what are the differences between them? So here we can see that this particular analog signal, if you see, this analog signal is its amplitude of the signal can take any value. It is not restricted to choose any particular value. Okay, it can take any value. It means that this analog signal can take any value in between minus infinity to plus infinity. Its amplitude. Okay, and time is continuous. That's why we are saying that it is continuous time analog signal. Okay, now if you talk about the discrete time analog signal, you must be wondering that now the signal getting discretized. Okay, but the signal is getting discretized in time only because we are just taking the sampled version of the signal. Okay, but still the signal is analog. Why it is analog? Because this signal can take any value again. Okay, if you take the sample at this instant of time or that instant of time or any instant of time, it can take any value. We are not restricting this amplitude to take a certain value only. Okay, it is not restricted, it can take any value. Okay, so it can assume any value. For example, if you take this line segment, we know that in the continuous time analog signal, it can take infinite number of points in between them. Okay, infinite number of points. So similarly, it can take the infinite number of amplitude when we sampled this signal. And therefore, we are saying that this discrete time signal, but it is still analog. Okay, it is not digital signal. Similarly, when we talk about continuous time digital signal, then you have to understand that in the case of the digital signal, the amplitude is going to be discretized, or the signal is going to take only finite set of amplitudes. Okay, finite set of amplitudes. For example, in this case here you can see the signal is either taking this value or it is taking this value. Okay, either positive amplitude, here it is not written like whether it is plus 5 or minus 5. Okay, but let us assume that it is plus 5, so it is either taking plus 5 or it is taking minus 5. Okay, it can all either you can like write here like it is plus 5, it is minus 1, you can write plus 1 minus 1, whatever. But the thing is that we have to understand that the amplitude is only taking a finite set of value. in the case of digital signal, but in the case of analog signal, it is taking infinite number of amplitude values. Okay, but here it is just taking the finite set. Sometimes students are also getting confused whether it should be just like a binary data or not. Okay, the answer is to just to qualify as a digital signal, it need not to be a binary signal. Okay, like here you can see it is just taking the two levels, one positive, another negative. Okay, so it is nothing but you are a binary data. Okay, it is a binary data, binary waveform. It is a continuous time signal, and that's why it is defined for each and every instant of time. But still, it is a digital signal because it is taking a finite number of amplitudes. Okay, so if suppose we have another signal which is taking three set of values. Okay, let us suppose if it is taking +5, then it is taking 0, then again it is -5, again it is 0, then +5. Still it is a digital signal. Why it is digital signal? Because the signal's amplitude is taking the finite number of amplitudes. That you have to remember, it is taking the finite number of amplitude. So whenever the amplitude is getting discretized, we are restricting this signal to assume only finite set of amplitude, then the signal is called as the digital signal. Okay, simply it is called as the digital signal. So that digital signal can be a continuous time in this fashion, okay, because it is defined for each and every instant of time, or it can be a discrete time digital signal. Okay, in which these amplitudes are still finite. Okay, it is just taking, the signal is taking just finite set of amplitudes. Okay, but it is defined for discrete instant of time. So I hope you must be able to understand what we mean to say that analog signal and digital signal, and how to define continuous time analog signal, discrete time analog signal, or continuous time digital signal, or discrete time digital signal. So now the next class of signal, which is very important, is the periodic signal. Okay. So as we know that in the case of the sinusoidal signal, so the sinusoidal signal, we know that it is having its mathematical form, and we know that the sinusoidal signal will be extending from -infinity to +infinity, and it will have a certain time interval. Okay, time period. Okay, so after a certain time interval, the same waveform is going to repeat. Okay, the same thing has been shown here. Like we have any arbitrary signal, it may be possible that its mathematical form may not be defined, but its graphical form is defined. Okay, here you can see that the signal is starting here, it is taking this particular shape, and then again after an interval of t naught, the same part is repeating. Okay, again after a t naught interval, the same part is repeating. Okay, so basically what happens is, basically a signal to qualify as a periodic signal, then this particular mathematical condition is to be satisfied. Okay, so if we define the signal as a GT, then if we advance the signal by an amount of t naught, or delayed the signal by amount of minus t naught, okay, whether it is plus t naught or minus t naught, the signal will remain same as a GT. Okay, it will again the same signal we are going to get. So this is what is the mathematical definition for all t. Okay, so basically one segment is known, and if this GT, if we add this GT to any time period equals to t naught, we are going to get the same function again. So this is how our periodic signal is defined. Okay, the same segment is going to repeat after a certain time period. Okay, so this is the way how we define the periodic signal. It will have a certain periodicity. Okay, it will have a certain frequency. Okay, and generally this signal, to be a periodic, it must be defined from -infinity to infinity. Means it must be defined for all the time. Okay, You cannot say that if it is defined just for a few seconds, then it cannot be periodic. If you are talking about a sinusoidal wave defined for 10 seconds or 20 seconds, 100 seconds, and then after it is not defined, it is not a purely periodic signal, that you remember. Similarly, whenever this type of mathematical equations are not satisfied, okay, when it is not satisfied, then the signal is called as an aperiodic signal. Okay, like in this picture, you can see that the signal is not repeating itself after a certain interval of time. Okay, there is no such repetition. Okay, so we are calling it as an aperiodic signal. And for an aperiodic signal, there will be neither a repetition, we cannot define its time period, and it is not necessary that the signal will be defined for an infinite duration. Okay, so this way we can define our periodic signal and aperiodic signal. Now we have another class, okay, which is called as the energy or power of a signal, means energy signal or a power signal. So before defining that one, I just would like to consider this mathematics, okay, so that you would be able to understand it clearly. So you can see that whenever we have any circuit, okay, let's suppose that we have a circuit, a very simple circuit here we have. So this resistive circuit we have, in which we have a voltage source which is defined as GT. So when we have this connection, like in the case A, then there will be a current that must be flowing through the circuit, okay, and that current will be obviously voltage divided by the resistance value. So that will be equals to GT upon R. So this amount of current is going to flow through this circuit, okay. Similarly, if instead of having the voltage source, if we have any current source, okay, let us say we are having a current source which is defined as GT, then due to this current source, there will be a voltage that is going to be developed across this resistor, okay, due to this amount of current. So obviously the voltage that will be going to develop is again, we have to follow the Ohm's law in both the cases. So here this current, the voltage which is going to be developed across the resistor will be R multiplied with the current, which is nothing but our GT. So in both the cases, what we can do is we can calculate what will be the power going to be dissipated in the resistance due to this energy or power sources. Okay, so we are having certain voltage or current sources. So what will be the power which is going to be dissipated in the resistance? So just to put it very simple, what we can do is we know that to calculate the power dissipation across the resistor, what we have to do is this power dissipation can be calculated by calculated the voltage across the resistor multiplied with the current through the resistor. This is the basic equation that you can understand from your network analysis or circuit theory. Okay. So current through the resistor and the voltage across the resistor. So in case of case A, you can see that the voltage which is across the resistor is nothing but our GT. Okay, this is our GT. This is, will be applied across this resistor, and the current through the resistor is GT upon R. So this is GT cross GT upon R. So if you multiply this together, you will be getting G square T divided by R. So that will be our power. Similarly, in case B, we are having the voltage equals to R into GT. This is our voltage, R into GT, and the current is GT. So again, if you multiply, you will be getting this result equals to G square T into R. So in this case, what power that we are going to dissipate due to voltage source and the current source is nothing but G square T divided by R, and here in this case it is G square T into R. Generally, as we can see that the power dissipated in any of the circuit, okay, it will be depending on the load value, okay, it will be depending on the resistance value, okay. So basically what we try to do is we will be trying to normalize the power. We will be interested in just having a normalized power, by putting this resistance value R equals to 1 ohm. Okay, so once we put R equals to 1 ohm, we are just trying to calculate what will be the normalized power. Okay, normalized power when the resistance value is 1 in both the cases. Okay, in both the cases. So obviously, if you substitute R equals to 1, R equals to 1, we are going to get P equals to G square T. Okay, so this will be the power which is going to be normalized power, and you can say that that is going to be dissipated in this circuit. Okay, similarly, if you wish to calculate the normalized energy, okay, then if we know the power, we have to just integrate this. Okay, just we have to integrate this from minus infinity to t. Okay, so over the amount of time for which this power is being dissipated, that will be equals to your energy. Okay, this is the basic definition that we must be aware of that. Okay, so over the time when because power, as we know that it is the energy per unit time. So when it is operated for a few seconds or few hours, okay, then for that amount of hours we have to multiply that particular power to get the total energy. So here we are calculating the normalized energy. You remember that it is not the actual energy. Remember, it is the normalized energy that we are talking about. And that energy can be calculated by doing this integration from minus infinity to t and g square t dt. So basically, this is when dissipated in any time t that we are able to calculate. But suppose that if we wish to calculate for the real signals for infinite duration, okay, obviously this energy can be calculated for minus infinity to infinity g square t dt. Okay, this is our total normalized energy. Okay, if we want to calculate for the entire duration, okay. So basically, this is one of the definition of our energy. Okay, one of the definition of our normalized energy that we can calculate. Here, the G can be any function. You remember GT. It can be a voltage function or it can be a current function. Okay, accordingly, we can decide the unit for our energy. Okay, so here we can generalize this particular equation. Okay, we can generalize this equation. So let us suppose if GT is not a real signal, if it is any complex signal, okay, if it is any complex signal, then this equation can further be written as, or a little bit modified, is that we cannot directly calculate the g square t, but rather first we have to calculate the absolute value, we have to square it, and then we have to calculate the energy value. So this is the generalized equation for calculating the normalized energy of any complex signal, any complex signal. The same thing is also applicable for the real signal, okay? Because even if you calculate the mode for a real signal, it will remain same, it doesn't changes. Okay, that's why this equation is more general form, okay? So once we have this normalized energy, we can again for the infinite duration, we can calculate the power. Okay, I'm just rewriting the equation. Okay, so we can calculate this power. Okay, so that equation can be the limit t tends to infinity 1 upon t, and this minus t by 2 to t by 2, and mod gt square dt. Okay, so this way we can calculate the power of any complex signal which is of infinite duration. Okay, so this way we can calculate the power of that particular signal. Now, where t is actually extending to infinity, because I'm talking about a signal which is of infinite duration. Okay, and it is a complex signal. So this way we can calculate the power of the signal, normalized power of the signal, and here we can calculate the normalized energy of the signal. Now, when we talk about the energy signal or a power signal, first of all, try to understand that in the case of communication or signals and system concept, okay, generally what we try to do is we want to interested in measuring the size of the signal. Okay, measuring the size of the signal, and it is a very interesting task if you understand. Okay, so you must be wondering how to measure the size of a signal. Okay, we have a signal, then how to measure the size of that particular signal. For example, if we have a two person, then obviously we can measure the size of the two persons, like what is the height, what is the weight, okay, what is the width of that particular person, okay. And that way we can define, okay, one person is having more size than the other, okay. Similarly, we have two pens of two different manufacturer, then we can say that, okay, one pen is having this much of width, this much of circumference, this much of height, okay. Similarly, other pen is having a different specific parameter. But now the question comes, how the same thing can be measured in the case of signals. This is very important. And this is how actually this energy and power signal is being defined. Okay. So basically what happens is, let us suppose if we have any signal and if we want to measure its size, okay, if we want to measure its size, okay, then because we are talking about one dimensional signal, which is a single valued function of time, then if you talk about the amplitude, okay, then you can see that at one point the signal is having a very high amplitude, but at the other point the signal's amplitude is very low. Then how can we define a signal that the signal is, in terms of its size, a signal is large or it is having more strength than the other signal? Okay, it is very important to understand how to define its size. So the first of all, the scientists first, they think that either we can calculate the area under the curve GT. Okay, if we are talking about any signal GT, if we calculate area under the curve, then that may give you a some sense of size of the signal. But then they think that if we calculate the area under the curve, then if the signal like sinusoidal wave, okay, if we have a sinusoidal wave, then because of the symmetry, we know that if we calculate area under the curve, one of the positive area will cancels the negative area. And therefore, it is going to give you a very small area of this particular signal. And that time, even though the signal is very large in terms of its amplitude, okay, or duration, okay, if the signal is defined for a very large duration, still the total area defined under the curve will be very small. Okay, so what they thought is calculating the area under the GT, means under the curve like GT is not sufficient. We cannot calculate in that way because it is going to give you sometimes misleading answers. Okay, so that's why they thought that rather calculating the area under the curve GT, we can calculate the area of G square T. Okay, rather than calculate the area under the curve GT, but we have to calculate the area covered by the signal G square T. Okay, so this is what we have seen in this last picture. Okay, so we are actually calculating this G square T dt. Okay, so this is what the idea is. Okay, so the idea is to calculate the size of that particular signal. So basically in the energy signal, if we have this, we have to calculate what is the energy of the signal. So basically any signal which is qualifies as a signal, energy signal, then there should be certain conditions. Okay, what are the conditions? That the energy signal should have a finite duration. Okay, it should be a finite duration and its amplitude should go to zero, or it tends to zero as t tends to infinity. So try to understand the definition. Any signal can be qualified as an energy signal if its amplitude tends to zero when t tends to infinity or time becomes very large. Or you can also say that the energy signal, any signal which is of very finite duration. Okay, if it is having a finite duration signal, obviously it is going to be an energy signal. Okay, so when we calculate the energy of such finite duration signal, okay, we are going to get a finite value of the energy. As I said that this is our equation for finite normalized energy. Okay, mod of gt square dt, it is the equation for normalized energy. Okay, so when it is a finite duration signal, okay, obviously when we calculate this integration, it is going to give you the finite value. Okay, it is not giving you infinite value, it will give you finite value. And whenever you calculate the power value of this average power, okay, or normalized power of this particular signal, you are going to get it 0. Okay, I'm not proving this one. Okay, but obviously in the last equation you can see it is t tends to infinity. Okay, so when it is t tends to infinity, and when this integration is finite, obviously the power will become 0. So we can test it with taking a certain examples. Okay, that means that the energy signal should be of finite duration. Its amplitude should go to 0 or tends to 0 whenever a time becomes very high, very large, and it will have the finite energy and its power value will be equals to 0. So this way we can say it will be an energy signal. Now come to the point of power signal. Okay. So let's suppose we have a signal which is of infinite duration. Okay. If it is having an infinite duration, and if it is infinite duration, and obviously the signal is not going to converge. Okay. Its amplitude is not going to 0 when t becomes very large. Okay. So when we can talk about any periodic signal, for example, if we talk about a sinusoidal wave, in that case, you know that the sinusoidal, periodic sinusoidal wave, it is extending from minus infinity to infinity. And when we calculate its energy, okay, its energy cannot be a finite value because it is extending up to infinity. Okay, so that's why its energy value will be infinite. Okay, so such signals will be having or possessing infinite energy. Okay, infinite energy. So whenever a signal is containing infinite normalized energy, then if you calculate the normalized power or averaged power of that particular signal, that power is going to be finite. Okay, the signal with finite power. Okay, the signal with finite power. Okay, we can test this particular condition. So whenever we have any signal which is extending in up to the infinity, it is not a converging signal. Okay, then definitely it is going to be a power signal. Okay, it is not converging. Okay, it is having infinite energy and it is going to have the finite power. So generally all periodic signals are power signals. You remember that. Whenever we are talking about periodic signals, all periodic signals are power signals. But you remember that all power signals need not be periodic. Okay, need not be periodic. For example, in this case, the signal is not periodic. Okay, it is not periodic. But the thing is that the signal is extending up to infinity. It is having a certain amount of amplitude. Okay, it is having a certain amount of amplitude, and it is not going to converge. It is having a certain amount of amplitude all the time. Okay, it is defined all the time. Okay, and that's why this signal will be categorized as the power signal. Okay, there could be a signals that can be neither energy signal nor a power signal. Okay, it can neither have a finite energy nor having a finite power. Okay, you can have this example like a ramp signal. Okay, in the ramp signal we know that the ramp signal is extending in this way and it is going up to infinity. It is a diverging signal. Okay, its amplitude will become infinity when time t becomes infinity. Okay, and such signals are neither qualified as an energy signal nor as a power signal. So that you have to remember. So One more interesting point is that once you understood the energy signal concept and the power signal concept, we can think of what about the real signals? What about the laboratory grade signals? So you remember that uh, all these real signals, all these laboratory grade signals that we are able to generate are always be an energy signal. It cannot be a power signal because we cannot generate a signal for infinite duration, that you remember. Okay, so when it is not generated for the infinite duration, it can't be a power signal. Okay, so that's why we are saying that all the real signals, all the laboratory grade signals that we are able to generate, we will be able to generate it for a small duration of time, and it will be having a finite amplitude. So it can be only an energy signal. We cannot generate a power signal, okay, in the laboratories. So I hope this must be clear, this discussion. One more category is the deterministic and the probabilistic signal. Okay, this is another class. Okay, so in this class, if you see in the case of deterministic, okay, as the name suggests, deterministic means a signal that can be determined. Okay, so what we mean to say that it can be determined means we can predict this signal value or its graphical form uh, in near future values. Okay, if you want to predict what can be the form, okay, in the future, we can predict it. Why we are able to predict such signals? Because either its physical description or its mathematical description or graphical description is known. Okay, like in this case, sinusoidal wave. Okay, so why it is a deterministic signal? Because the sinusoidal wave, it has its particular mathematical form, and because of its mathematical form, we can define the signal each and every instant of time. Okay, we can define it, we can determine what will be the value. Okay, if it is defined up to this point, what will be the value at the next time, that can be determined, and that's why it is called as a deterministic signal. So that's why we are saying its physical description is completely known. So there may be a signal whose mathematical form is either known, or there may be a chances that its mathematical form is not known, but its graphical form is known. For example, in this case, this particular graph is having its graphical form. We do not have its mathematical form. Here we can write the equation like AC sine 2 pi f naught t or something. Okay, so here we have the mathematical form, but in this case we do not have the mathematical form, but we have the graphical form, and based on this graphical form, we will be able to tell at every instant of time what will be the value of this particular signal. So that's why we are saying that, because this values of the signal, okay, can be completely known, okay, in any instant of time, it is called as the deterministic. We can determine it, okay. But we have another class which is called as the probabilistic or random signals. Okay. So generally, as I said about the speech signal, okay. So in the speech signal, it is just for 100 milliseconds. We have just plotted this speech signal for 100 milliseconds. And here you can see that this signal is quite random. Okay. We can neither represent this signal in the form of mathematical equations. We cannot write any mathematical equation for it so that it can be determined that at what instant of time, what value it is going to take. Neither we have, nor we have its a graphical form, because we cannot ascertain that after a certain time instant, what kind of amplitude this speech signal can take. Okay, we cannot ascertain. Okay, so that's why its neither mathematical form is known nor its graphical form is known. Okay, so we cannot say that after the certain time what kind of waveform is going to come. So that's why we are calling it as a random signal. Okay, or it is a probabilistic signal because its probabilistic descriptions are actually available. Okay, like what is the mean value, what is the mean squared value of the signal, that quantity can be known. Okay, but the exact value is not known. Okay, mean value, mean squared value can be known, which is the statistical parameter. Its probabilistic description is available. Okay, but we cannot say that exactly after t second how much amplitude this particular waveform is going to take. Similarly, if we have any noise signal, okay, any noise signal, again noise signal is having its random nature. It is a probabilistic signal, it is random signal. Okay, we cannot tell what is its mathematical form. We cannot tell that at after a certain seconds what amount of amplitude it is going to take. Okay, so this is how we define the deterministic and the probabilistic signals. Okay, so these are the major class of signals that we have. Now I will be just talking about one more uh, like uh, uh, important point, Fourier transform, okay, which is very important in the case of communication. Okay, so as we know that the Fourier transform is one of the very important tool as far as our communication is concerned, because the Fourier transform is actually giving the information about the frequency part of any time domain waveform. If we have any expression in time domain waveform, okay, time domain expression if we have, then to get the idea of its frequency component available in the signal, we have this tool Fourier transform. Okay, so we have defined, I'm just taking this definition directly. I hope you must have seen these equations in your signals and system subjects. So basically the Fourier transform of any time domain signal, if we have any time domain signal xt, okay, then its Fourier transform x omega can be defined as like minus infinity to infinity x t e to the power minus j omega t dt. So this is called as the analysis equation. Okay, you will find this equation, it's a derivation in any of the signals and system book. But in the case of communication engineering, we have to just apply this particular knowledge. Okay, we have to apply directly. So similarly, we can define the inverse Fourier transform, which is also called as a synthesis equation. So if we have the Fourier transform of any signal x omega, okay, we can get the xt. Okay, so in the analysis equation, if we have the time domain equation, then we can calculate its equivalent Fourier transform x omega. That will give you the Fourier, that will be going to give you the frequency spectrum of the signal. Okay, and similarly, if we have the frequency spectrum, means Fourier transform of that signal, we can also extract the signal xt. Okay, by having this synthesis equation, xt equals 1 upon 2 pi minus infinity to infinity x omega e to the power j omega t d omega. So now we can see a few important class of signals, okay, whose Fourier transform we have to see. Okay, so first of all, I'll be talking about the equation xt equals to delta t. Okay, so I hope you must be aware about the signal delta t, which is a direct delta function. Okay, which is impulse function. Okay, so in this case, if you want to plot the delta t, uh, sorry for not including the plot in this particular slide, but I hope you must be able to understand this delta function will be, because it is delta t, it means that there will be a impulse function at t equals to 0. There will be a spike, and that spike will have its area equals to 1. Okay, because in front of delta t we just have unity. Okay, nothing is multiplied means it is multiplied with 1. So this delta t can be plotted as onto the x-axis. There will be a time. So at time t equals to 0, we have to plot one spike, and its area will be 1 unity. Okay, so there will be an arrow sign, okay, impulse function at this point. So that will be our impulse function. If it is something else like delta t minus 2 or t minus 3, then it will be shifted right side. Okay, there will be an impulse function at t equals to 2 seconds. If it is t plus 2, then this delta function will be plotted at t equals to minus 2. Okay, and its amplitude, or you can say the area, will be equals to 1. So if we have any function like xt equals to delta t, then basically if we wish to calculate the Fourier transform of this, okay, we have to use the analysis equation. So in this equation, we have to substitute xt equals to delta t. So if you substitute xt equals to delta t, we are having this equation delta t e to the power minus j omega t dt. Okay, then we have to use the property of the delta t. Okay, if we are having any impulse function, if any impulse function delta t is multiplied with another function, let's say it is yt or gt, okay, then delta t multiplied with yt is equivalent to delta t multiplied with y0. Okay, y0 means the value of function yt at t equals to 0. Okay, so this is the basic property of our delta function. So whenever a delta function is going to multiplied with any function, okay, let us suppose here it is delta t is multiplying with e to the power minus j omega t. In this case, due to this multiplication of the delta t, this will be transformed into delta t e to the power. We have calculate the value of this equation, okay, this particular e to the power minus j omega t at t equals to 0. So we have just substituted t equals to 0, so it will become minus j0. Okay, so here x omega is equals to minus infinity to infinity delta t e to the power minus j0. So obviously e to the power minus j0 will come out. Okay, and here we are going to get infinity minus infinity to infinity delta t dt, and by the definition of the impulse function, this is going to give you unity. Okay, this is the definition of the delta t. Please, if you are having any doubt regarding impulse function, you please go through the signals and system books, or otherwise if you feel any doubt about this, let me know by commenting in the comment box. I have not included actually these topics in this slide, but if you wish, I will make a 5 or 10 minutes video lecture, and I will be explaining you about the delta function. Okay, so let me know if you have any query. So basically it will be transforming into this equation. This is going to give you unity because this is the definition of the delta function, and this is again will become unity. So basically we are going to get x omega, which is equals to 1. So now what we can say is the delta t function is, if we are having delta t time domain expression, it is going to get its Fourier transform equals to 1, which is very important equation. Okay, you have to remember that the delta t is having its Fourier transform equals to 1, because many of the time we are going to use this particular equation in communication. Okay, now I will be just taking another example. Let us suppose that if we have any Fourier transform which is known to us. Okay, so any Fourier transform, so let us suppose if we have a Fourier transform which is known to us is x omega equals to delta omega minus omega naught. Okay, we have this Fourier transform. Let us suppose this is the Fourier transform of any signal. Then we want to know that which signal, time domain signal, will have this particular Fourier transform. Okay, which time domain signal will have this particular uh, Fourier transform. So again, if you want to plot this delta omega minus omega naught, you know that onto the x-axis there will be omega. Okay, onto the x-axis we have to plot omega, and there will be a spike or impulse of unit amplitude at omega equals to omega naught. Okay, so we are having this x-axis, we are having omega onto this x-axis, and at omega equals to omega naught we have to plot one spike. Okay, we have to plot one spike impulse, and that will be the plot of this particular uh, function. Okay, delta omega minus omega naught. Now if we have x omega equals to delta omega minus omega naught, then how to calculate the xt? So obviously we have to use this synthesis equation. Okay, we have to substitute x omega into this expression. So once you will substitute this x omega, okay, x omega into this expression, delta omega minus omega naught, e to the power j omega t d omega 1 upon 2 pi, then we will be able to calculate the x. So here we can see that once we substitute this, again we have to apply the property of our delta function. So here the delta function delta omega minus omega naught is multiplied with e to the power j omega t. Now we have to calculate the value of e to the power j omega t at omega equals to omega naught t, omega naught. Okay. So that's why we are substituting e to the power j omega naught t. It becomes e to the power j omega naught t. Okay, d omega. So this is our function. Now you can see that this function is becoming your constant. Okay, so it should be come out of this integration. So it is coming out of this integration. Fine. So it will come out of this integration. Again, we are going to get minus infinity to infinity delta omega minus omega naught d omega. Again, from the definition of the delta function, this integration will become unity. Okay, this will become unity. So we are going to get xt equals to 1 upon 2 pi e to the power j omega naught t. So what does it mean that we are having any time domain equation 1 upon 2 pi e to the power j omega naught t is going to have its Fourier transform delta omega minus omega naught. It is very important equation. You try to understand that. So any time domain equation, okay, 1 upon 2 pi e to the power j omega naught t, it will have its Fourier transform equals to delta omega minus omega naught. So what we can have is, if we are having e to the power j omega naught t as the time domain function, then obviously its Fourier transform is 2 pi is going to be multiplied this side. You are going to get e to the power j omega naught t. If we are having this time domain expression e to the power j omega naught t, then we are going to get its Fourier transform equals to 2 pi delta omega minus. This is very important equation. Okay. Similarly, if we have e to the power minus j omega naught t, okay, it can be shown that the Fourier transform of this particular equation is going to be 2 pi delta omega plus omega naught. Try to understand this. It will be 2 pi delta omega plus omega naught. Okay. So once we understood this Fourier transform, very important class, okay, very important class, okay, as far as your communication is concerned, then if we add them together, e to the power j omega naught t plus e to the power minus j omega naught t, the Fourier transform is again going to be added. Okay, it is going to be added. Okay, it is a linear operation, so it is going to be added. It is 2 pi delta omega minus omega naught and plus delta omega plus omega naught. So we know that from the Euler's identity, we do this addition, we are going to get cos omega naught t, 2 cos omega naught t. Okay. And then this 2 will be cancelled out. So basically, any cosine wave, okay, cos omega naught t is going to have this Fourier transform. It is very important equation, try to understand. It is pi delta omega minus omega naught plus delta omega plus omega. Similarly, you can subtract this, you will be able to get sine omega naught t, that will be equals to pi upon j, and then you are going to get delta omega minus omega naught plus delta omega plus omega naught. So here we can see that the Fourier transform has been shown on omega scale, okay, onto the radian scale, omega, okay. This can also be shown onto the frequency scale f, okay. So we have the certain equations. So if we have delta 2 pi f, okay, if we have delta 2 pi f, This can also be written as 1 upon 2 pi delta f. Okay, you remember that. We can write delta 2 pi f equals to 1 upon 2 pi delta f, or even if you have delta at, okay, if we are having delta at, then small at, then that can be written as 1 upon mod of a delta t. Okay, 1 upon mod of a delta t. So basically we can use this property of the delta function if we have delta 2 pi f, which is 2 pi f is nothing but your omega, then this can be again further written as 1 upon 2 pi delta f. Okay, so these two equations, okay, these two equations in the form of delta f, okay, can be written further as cos 2 pi f naught t. Okay, I have just expanded this omega naught, so that will be equals to 2 pi f naught t. So this can be written as 1 upon 2, 1 upon 2, because 1 upon 2 pi we have written here. So 2 pi, we have to divide it with the 2 pi. So pi will be cancelled out, 1 upon 2 will be left out. And this will become f minus f naught, and it is f plus f. Similarly, we can write the equation for sine 2 pi f naught t in the terms of f. So please remember these equations, okay, these two equations, either it may be required to write in this form or this form. Okay, both forms should be remembered. Okay, it is very important equation. So now we have arrived at a particular equation, like what will be the Fourier transform of a cosine or a sine wave? Okay, what will be the Fourier transform of a sine wave or a cosine wave? Okay, uh, why I'm telling all this, because in the communication now subsequently when we talk about the amplitude modulation and double side DSBSC modulation and all other modulation schemes, we have to write a certain time domain equations, and after the writing time domain equations we have to calculate the Fourier transforms. So you should have this basic knowledge about the Fourier transform, because I will be just directly writing these equations. Okay, so you have to remember that, okay, this will be the Fourier transform of the cosine or the sine wave. Okay, so that time you should not be bothered about. Okay, so now similarly now directly we can use these equations, and I can define another class of signal. Okay, which is very important in case of communication. You remember that it is not in the classification, I haven't written it, but this classification is also very important, which is our single tone or multi-tone signal. Okay, you come across number of times in the communication that there is a single tone modulation or a multi-tone modulation. So try to understand that what is the single tone or what is the multi-tone signal. Okay, so first you try to understand what we mean to say tone. Tone is nothing but frequency. Okay, so try to understand tone is nothing but a frequency. So when we say single tone, means it is single frequency signal. Okay, it is single frequency signal. If it is multi-tone signal, means it is having a multiple frequency signal. Okay, it is more than one. Fine. So how to identify a signal? Just by seeing its time domain expression or its spectrum, means its Fourier transform. Okay, so let us say that we are having any message signal mt. Okay, I have not written here mt, but suppose that we are having any message signal mt, which is mt equals to cos 2 pi f naught t. Okay, so obviously when we have this particular signal cos 2 pi f naught t, then you must be able to tell this cosine function is having its frequency equals to f naught. Okay, so this f naught is a single value. Okay, it is just having only single frequency component f naught. So you can directly tell even after seeing the empty equation, means message signal expression, time domain expression of the message signal, and you can say that it is a single tone, it is a single frequency signal, because it is just having one frequency. And we know that the cos 2 pi f naught t is having its Fourier transform equals to 1 upon 2 delta f minus f naught plus delta f plus f naught. Okay, we have just previously derived. Okay, so now we can basically we can plot these expressions. Okay, frequency spectrum we can plot. Okay, and that will be represented by MF. So here I have just plotted the frequency spectrum of this particular delta functions. So here the delta function, one delta function of amplitude 1 upon 2 should be plotted at f equals to f naught. Okay, so here is f equals to f naught. I have plotted one delta function, okay, whose amplitude is 1 by 2. And another delta function we have at f equals to minus f naught. Okay, we are having f equals to minus f naught. So at f equals to minus f naught, another impulse function is being plotted whose amplitude is 1 by 2. Now, from the spectrum itself, you can see that we are just having only one impulse function, okay, which is present at f equals to f naught, and therefore this signal is single tone signal. Okay, it is a single tone signal because it is just having single frequency component. Please do not count one frequency, means one frequency at f naught and another at minus f naught. Okay, it is just a replica. Okay, so just to tell that whether it is a single tone or multi-tone, you just see the positive part of the frequency. Okay, how many impulses are available at the positive side of the frequency, not about the negative side. Okay, so this is a single tone signal. Okay, single tone signal. Now we can take an example of a multi-tone signal. For example, if we are having mt equals to cos 2 pi f1t plus cos 2 pi f2t. Now you can see that we are having a signal mt, okay, and a signal mt or xt, whatever it is. So I have written here xf, so let us say it is xt, it is defined as xt. So if it is xt equals to cos 2 pi f1t plus cos 2 pi f2t, obviously there are two cosine signals. One frequency is f1 and another frequency is f2. Okay, so because of the two different frequencies, okay, obviously it is containing more than one frequency, and that's why from time domain expression itself we can say that it is a multi-tone signal. Okay, now we can again plot the we can get the Fourier transform. So we know that the Fourier transform for cos 2 pi f1t will be equals to half delta f minus f1 plus delta f plus f1, because here it is f1. Okay, it is delta f minus f1, f plus f1. Similarly for this term, so again plus sign, okay, cos 2 pi f2t. So its spectrum will be its Fourier transform will be again half delta f minus f2, because here it is f2, then delta f plus f2. Just considering in this case that f2 is greater than f1, let us suppose that f2 is greater than f1. Okay, then at f equals to f1, okay, at f equals to f1 we have to plot this delta function. Okay, this delta function. So f equals to f1, we have plotted the delta function whose amplitude is half. Then another impulse function at f equals to minus f1 we have to plot. So it is at f equals to minus f1, its amplitude is half. Okay, its amplitude is half. Then again we have this delta function. So that delta function is at equals to f equals to f2. So we are considering that f2 is greater than f1. So it is at this point f2, and we have plotted impulse function. Another impulse function is at f equals to minus f2. So it is plotted at this point. Okay. So here all the amplitudes of this impulse function is 1 upon 2, half. Okay. It is not required even. Okay. If it is not necessary that the amplitude should be same. Okay. Like here it is 1. Here you can make the amplitude equals to 2. And accordingly, these amplitudes will modify. Remember that its amplitude may modify. Okay, so that doesn't make means we do not have to think about it. If it is 2, then it will become obviously 2 will be cancelled out, and its strength will become more, its height will become more, it will become 1. Okay, so that time its height will become more. So that is the possibility. So obviously here you can see that it is a multi-tone signal. Why? Because in the positive side of this spectrum, we are having more than one frequency part, more than one impulse functions. Okay, so it is having more than one frequency part, and that's why it is a multi-tone signal. Whenever we have the multi-tone signal, we can define what is the bandwidth of the signal. Okay, so bandwidth of the signal is defined as maximum frequency component minus minimum frequency component. Only positive side we have to consider. We do not consider this negative. Okay, we cannot say f2 is the maximum and minus f2 is the minimum. No, we have to tell that only the positive part. So maximum positive part is f2 and the minimum positive part is f1. So the bandwidth in this case is f2 minus f1. Okay, but here we cannot define the bandwidth. To remember that in the single tone, because we do not have the lower limit. Okay, we are just having only one frequency component, we cannot define the bandwidth. Now another picture I have shown over here. Okay, you remember that this is again a multi-tone signal. Okay, if it's means mathematical form is not known, let us suppose, but if somebody is drawing this particular spectrum, okay, and if they are asking you that you tell me whether it is a multi-tone signal or a single tone signal, then you must be able to tell that it is a multi-tone signal. Why it is a multi-tone signal? Because here you can see that this particular positive part of the frequency, the non-zero value of MFU is actually varying from 0 to 5 kilohertz. You can see. Okay. So it is not only like the only impulse function should be plotted, then only we will be able to tell that it is having a frequency component. But this MF is having its non-zero value right from 0 hertz to 5 kilohertz. And after 5 kilohertz, there are no frequency components are available. Okay, this magnitude only representing that at 2 kilohertz frequency is having its maximum strength. Okay, the strength of the frequency component at 2 kilohertz is maximum, and when the frequency is decreasing, the strength of that particular frequency component is also decreasing. Here again it is decreasing, and up to 5 kilohertz the frequencies are available, and beyond 5 kilohertz there are no frequency components are available. So obviously, what is the bandwidth of this particular signal? If you say the maximum frequency component to the minimum frequency component. So maximum frequency component is 5 kilohertz and the minimum frequency component is 0. Okay, so 5 minus 0, so it is a 5 kilohertz. So its bandwidth is defined as 5 kilohertz. So remember that whenever we are having this type of spectrum, it represents it is a multi-tone signal. It is not a single tone signal. So I hope this discussion must be clear about whatever I have discussed today. So still, if you have any query, please go through this lecture again and again to clarify your doubts. And even if you have any questions, please drop me message so that I can explain you further, because these three lectures are very important, because in the coming lectures I'm going to start with the amplitude modulation, in which I will be directly using all these means concepts whatever I have discussed till now. So thank you for watching. If you have any query, please drop your message. So we will be coming up with the next lecture, so please stay tuned with this particular channel. So thank you for watching.